Coming up in the news tonight, the leader of the business community reviewing the state of the economy. Taxi drivers appealing for help. And some good news for Bahamians studying in the U.S. The Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition, starts now.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, Northern Edition.
This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening, all. I'm Megan Shepard. Thank you so much for tuning in. Topping news, the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce giving an assessment of the state of Grand Bahama's economy to date. The island continues to battle from Hurricane Dorian and now COVID-19, two major economic blows just months apart. But the Chamber's leader says there are signs of hope. He points to two bright spots in the economy. Italia Hall reports.
The COVID-19 pandemic has indeed impacted the economy of the Bahamas, but President of the Grand Bahama Chamber of Commerce, Gregory LaRota, says, despite the ongoing challenges the economy of Grand Bahama face, some businesses are excelling. He says those selling building supplies and grocery are doing well.
Businesses that tend to be, from what I observe, on the lower end of the recovery process would be the ones, obviously, that rely heavily on tourism for their sales. And so in some of those businesses, they have kind of changed their marketing approach to target locals as well. So they're seeing some level of commerce, but obviously it wouldn't be anywhere near what it would be if we still had tourists on the island. And so those ones will continue to struggle until we could see a bounce back in the tourism industry.
And with COVID-19 cases climbing in the country, he says he believes that business owners are doing their part to stop the spread of the deadly disease.
In a lot of the stores that you go in, they have sanitizing stations at the door, and they would insist that you sanitize before you continue further into the store. They're making sure you're wearing masks before you're allowed to enter the store as well. I've observed the markings both inside and outside most of the facilities that show you where to stand in order to establish that 6 feet distance between you and the next customer.
But the president says he is concerned about persons who are not wearing their masks properly.
I see quite a number of persons wearing masks and not having their nose covered. And obviously that's not the proper way to do it.
You may remember in April of this year, the chamber president was one of the persons selected to be on the Economic Recovery Committee. LaRota says so far, the committee has been reviewing suggestions from stakeholders and conducting research on a wide range of topics.
We're now moving into the area of public consultation. And so you would see this week a number of flyers going out to make persons in the community aware of the different times that we're going to have these. It'll be digital, obviously, but then we'll have these town hall meetings, so to speak.
He believes the committee will make a difference and is confident that it will move Grand Bahama in the right direction.
I know I've heard comments as I move about from some stakeholders, actually, that, here we go again. This is another committee that will do a report and then it'll be put on the shelf. Nothing will come from it. But from what I've seen so far and in all the communications I've been involved in, I think I can say with confidence that no, that wouldn't be the case.
Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
Well, it's been some 2 weeks since the government reopened the country's borders, and those in the public transportation sector say they are feeling the pinch of COVID-19. Taxi union members on the island are appealing for more assistance from the government, as they say some 500 drivers are back to work, but less than 3% are earning an income. Rumiko Knowles has more.
Even though they came to work, there's nothing for them to do.
Those in the public transportation sector returned to the workforce on July 1st, hoping to generate an income to support their families. But according to President of the Taxi Drivers Union, Harold Curry, that has not been the case. He says since the borders reopened, there has been little to no work for taxi drivers.
If you go to the airport, you'll find about 4 taxis working out there, and they'll be there all day. And still some of them don't get a job. You go around the supermarket, you'll find about 7 or 8. And this morning, some of them been out there from 7 o'clock this morning, after now it's almost 3 o'clock, and they didn't get a job as yet. So even though they're back to work from July 1st, there's nothing for them to do.
Now, cruise ships are expected to resume sailing to the island in the months ahead. But Curry says given the circumstances surrounding COVID-19, nothing is guaranteed.
We know that we would not be back to work in September or October because if you look at our next door neighbor, Florida, they are under this COVID-19 and they're spreading massively over there every day. So we're not looking for the economy to open till sometime next year, and we don't know what time. But at the same time, the drivers, they're home and nothing to do, and their children and stuff need food on the table.
In the meantime, he's appealing for the government to extend the unemployment benefits given to taxi drivers for at least another 12 weeks.
Even though the government was giving us an unemployment benefit, but that was for 8 weeks, and they had an additional 4 weeks. That's only 12 weeks. But then we have drivers who were down from September of last year because we were down from the hurricane. And I want them to understand that you have to treat us on a different level from we treat Nassau, because we get hit with a pandemic and also with a hurricane in September.
Rumiko Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Meantime, some hotel properties have reopened their doors and are ready for business. The Castaways Resort and Suites reopened on July 6. Sales and marketing manager Vernon Grant says since then, they've seen an increase in bookings.
Mostly of our domestic product, our domestic destination with local Bimini traveling between the islands, Nassau, Bimini, and Abaco, coming here to Grand Bahama for weddings, funerals, etc. And as always, we've always been narrowing in on our domestic product.
Grant says bookings from the U.S. are down due to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, he says the resort has all of the necessary protocols in place to protect both staff and guests. He says if things go well, he believes they will see an increase in their international bookings.
We're in communication with Expedia, Magnuson, Booking.com, and all of our other social travel partners such as Carnival and Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, etc. They do bring a lot of business to our resort. We're keeping our communication and channel open in those directions. So we see things looking great towards the Christmas. But however, if we do not get a firm handle on COVID-19, our borders may be closed, or I call compromised, and that too would affect our bookings. So we look forward to something like that not happening.
The president of the Grand Bahama Port Authority admits that current challenges are impacting the development of the city. Nonetheless, he says there is every reason to be optimistic, as he believes that this island remains resilient. Italia Hall has the story.
President of the Grand Bahama Port Authority, Ian Roll, admitting that Hurricane Dorian and now the COVID-19 pandemic have indeed delayed plans for the city of Freeport. But the GBPA is still doing their part to assist residents during this health crisis.
We stopped our collection efforts in regards to the licensees during this period. We also stopped going out and disconnecting a number of the utility accounts during this period, because we know persons are, desperately in need and in survival mode at the moment. We would have also participated in buying supplies for all of the elderly homes.
A significant donation was made to the Grand Bahama Health Services as well.
We introduced a feeding program. We're working with Reach Out Ministries in a more intensified manner right now because there's a huge need in terms of feeding persons on the island at the moment. We've got involved in the home repair work as well, and it's still ongoing.
And as it relates to the Carnival Cruise Port, the port president says the investors are still interested.
As far as I can see and where I sit, Carnival is still very much involved with the planning of that with the Grand Bahama Port Authority. So it looks like that project will move forward. And then I'm not directly related to the hotel, but we're directly related to the redevelopment of the harbor with the same group that wants to buy the hotel, and that too is moving along.
Roll says the GBPA is committed to the island of Grand Bahama, and going forward, the organization hopes to work even closer with the government.
And come up with creative ideas on how to also make the jurisdiction more attractive. There are a number of jurisdictions that are close by and competing for the same business. And yes, we might have this special economic zone and certain concessions, but there are certain zones right around us have gone further than we have over the years and are becoming even more attractive than we are. So we have to work together and come up with rules and ways to make business also easier in Grand Bahama to transform this economy.
The president noting that the COVID-19 pandemic and other challenges facing the island are bigger than any one government or the Port Authority, and it is imperative that the public and private sector continue to work together. Italia Hall, ZNS Network News.
Well, U.S. media reporting that President Donald Trump's administration has agreed to rescind its controversial rule barring international students from living in the USA while taking fall classes online. It is a sharp reversal after the White House faced a slew of lawsuits challenging the policy. A Massachusetts judge announced the decision during a federal court hearing in a case filed last week by Harvard University and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Judge Allison Burroughs said the university's request for the court to block the rule was moot because the government agreed to rescind the policy. On Monday, 18 state attorneys general filed suit against the Department of Homeland Security over the controversial position, which would have forced foreign students to leave or face deportation if they were enrolled in only online classes this fall. That's when experts fear expanded outbreaks of COVID-19 cases. According to data from the U.S. Department of Commerce, international students contributed nearly $45 billion to the U.S. economy in 2018. And more COVID-19 cases here on Grand Bahama. The Ministry of Health releasing the daily dashboard a short time ago. 3 additional cases for Grand Bahama: a 45-year-old male with no history of travel, a 43-year-old male with no history of travel, and an 84-year-old female with no history of travel, bringing Grand Bahama's grand total to 21 confirmed cases. There are 2 new cases in New Providence, as well as a 73-year-old male of New Providence with a history of travel, and a 27-year-old female of New Providence with a history of travel. Nassau now has a total of 89 cases. The total number of cases in the country stands at 124. 3 persons are hospitalized. Health officials continue to warn everyone to follow simple protocols like wearing a mask, washing your hands regularly, use an alcohol-based sanitizer, cover your cough or sneeze in your elbow, and clean and disinfect surfaces on a regular basis.
In Isaiah chapter 12, verse 6, stands most Western assumptions about the meaning of the Christian faith. Most Westerners, Christian or not, assume and preach that the point or purpose of being a Christian, of being religious, is that somewhere there is a God, somewhere there is a heaven, and it is our task to find our way there. The people in the first century who were thinking about needing to escape this world and go to heaven were not Christians. they were Platonists, people like Plutarch. And this is because the message of the Bible from the beginning to the end is not about how we get to live with God, but about Isaiah 12 and 6, how God gets to dwell in our midst, how God gets to be with us. And that is the extraordinary promise, which I believe starts in Genesis 1 and reaches its climax in Revelation chapter 21 and 22, when the new Jerusalem comes down from heaven to earth, and God himself was there. In all of your troubles, always remember that God is there with you. He is ever present and ever blessing. May God continue to bless you.
And coming up, third wave volunteers making their presence felt on Grand Bahama.